The defensive system that makes Shakur Stevenson impossible to hit. Question: how was the system built? So how was this defensive system built? Because it did not appear overnight. It was built layer by layer, fight by fight, weight class by weight class. Now, when Shakur Stevenson won the silver medal at the 2016 Olympics, he did it as a bantamweight. He reached the final at 123 pounds and lost a split decision. That matters because at bantamweight, you cannot hide behind size. You need timing, you need eyes, you need balance, you need the control of distance. And Shakur was already showing all of this as a teenager. Now, some fighters build themselves around pressure. Other fighters build themselves around power. But Shakur built himself around defensive boxing IQ, because he takes away your first look, then your second look, and then he takes away your confidence. Think of this. A lot of fighters learn how to throw punches. Shakur Stevenson learned how to make punches disappear. And because that foundation was developed at bantamweight, it gave him something special. His reactions were formed in a division where speed is extreme. So when he moved up the divisions, his mind stayed fast, his eyes stayed calm, and his opponents started looking slower and slower. Think of this. That is why his defense looks natural, because it is not panic defense, it is educated defense. It is anticipation, it is memory, it is muscle memory under pressure. The shoulder roll. So let's get to the heart of it, and that is the shoulder roll. A lot of people use that phrase too casually. They think it is just one pose, one pretty move, one Mayweather imitation. But with Shakur, it is deeper than that. Because he uses a shoulder roll lean, he subtly tilts his upper body. He changes the angle of your target, so the clean shot you think you see is not really there. The punch either hits the shoulder, glances off, or falls short. And then there is the South Philly shell, and this is where he becomes really awkward. Think of this. Most people think that the shoulder roll is in an orthodox context, but Shakur does it from the southpaw stance, so the geometry changes. The lead shoulder is still a shield, but now the rear hand position, the lead hand control, and the line of the straight left all work together differently. And remember, he is long, he is relaxed, he shells up without becoming static, and that makes him very hard to read. So how do you beat the shoulder roll? That is the real question. In theory, you beat it with variety. You go to the body, you change the rhythm, you feint before you commit, you punch in layers, you pin the feet, you force him to reset, you do not headhunt, you do not fall in love with one shot. And think of this, and this is the key. It is not about the theory, it is about the implementation. Everybody knows the theory, but very few fighters can actually implement it against someone with Shakur's timing. Because when you go to the body, he may take a half step and make you reach. When you feint, he may not bite. When you try to trap him, he may turn you. When you double up the jab, he may parry the first and beat you to the second jab. Think of this. The defensive system is not just a set of moves. It is the sequencing of those moves under real speed, and that's why it works. Anybody can practice a shoulder roll in the mirror, but very few can implement it when punches are flying towards them. But Shakur can. And think of this, if you can figure out the South Philly shell of Shakur Stevenson, then he'll just change his defensive guard. The psychological layer. And then there is the psychological layer, because defense is not just physical, it is emotional, it is mental. It's not about what you feel after 2 rounds, it's how you feel after 4 rounds, 6 rounds, 8 rounds, etc. Now against Teofimo Lopez in January 2026, Shakur handled the occasion like a man who understood the moment. It was at Madison Square Garden, it was a huge fight, and it was a chance to become a 4-division world champion. And he did not look overwhelmed by it. He looked calm, he looked prepared, he looked like the occasion belonged to him. And that is important, because Teofimo is dangerous when he can drag you into the emotion, into the chaos, into the pride, into the ego. But Shakur Stevenson stayed disciplined. He stayed inside the structure. He trusted his southpaw jab, he trusted his eyes, he trusted the film study. And after the fight, he basically said he picked Teofimo apart and mentally broke him down. Think of this. A great defender does not only make you miss, he makes you doubt. And doubt is poison in boxing. Once a fighter starts hesitating, once he starts asking himself, what is he seeing? Once he starts getting frustrated, the fight starts slipping away from him. And that is what Shakur does to people. He does not just block punches, he blocks your confidence. The counter-argument. So now let's bring a counter-argument, because no fighter is flawless. Now the Oscar Valdez fight in April 2022 was a brilliant performance by Shakur Stevenson. He dominated, he dropped Valdez in the 6th, he won the fight wide on the cards, and he still gave us something to think about. Because even in a dominant win, there were hints, perhaps, of limitations. The first weakness is that Shakur Stevenson can become a little too comfortable when in control. For example, Valdez landed 110 punches on him according to CompuBox, and that was the most landed by an opponent against Shakur Stevenson at that point. Now that does not mean that Valdez solved him, he clearly did not, but it does show that if you keep trying, if you stay disciplined, if you throw enough, you can at least force some exchanges and hit Stevenson more than people may assume. And the second weakness is that sometimes Shakur prioritizes safety over devastation. Now that is great for winning, but it can reduce the pressure on the opponent late in the fight, because there are moments where you want Shakur Stevenson to step on the gas to close the show, to punish the other man's mistakes and become more aggressive. So what happens when the fight is close? What happens when the opponent is bigger? What happens when cruising is not enough? But let's put this in perspective. Think of this. The better your defense is, the higher the offensive expectations become. And what I mean is, this is a paradox. Shakur's greatness makes people demand even more from him. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community. So that means I'm interested in your comments, your questions, and your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, simply like and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content, then click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.